Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to part 12 of the Employee Manager, where we're going to be taking remote time clock data from anywhere around the world using an amazing form that we've created, and we're going to bring that into Excel and have that automatically appear in the time clock with a click of a button or even without clicking a single button. I can't wait to show this to you, so let's get started. Alrighty, I'm so thankful you joined me today. I've got so much to show you as always. We've covered a lot and we're working our way through this Employee Manager. But one of the most important things, as we know, is bringing that time clock data in. And of course, we do have the ability to use the time clock, which we showed you in episode 10, where users who are on the premises can enter their employee ID and have that clock in or clock out or break information automatically appear in the time clock list here. But what if those employees are not on the premises? What if they've worked outside and they don't come back? How are they going to get that time clock data into that? Well, today we're going to walk you through exactly how that's done, how anybody around the world can get their information, their time clock data, and we're going to create a form actually that looks just like this. And we're going to show you whether it's an employee ID, the clock in information, break information if they have, and clock out. They're going to click send the time clock entry. It's going to be sent automatically, and it's going to appear automatically in this sheet in Excel, just like that, just by clicking a button, or even automatically we can run that macro. So I'm excited to show that to you because that's a really important part, and it's also been a highly requested system. We have a few other things to go over in this episode, so we're going to get right to those. So let's get on those. This is the list in part 12, which is where we are. We cleared up a few bugs, so let's get to them. We had, when we change employees, we had an attachment bug here that showed the attachment picture. So if we were to add an attachment here, it would show that picture without actually, let's go ahead and pull that up. Now, so if we have a picture here and we change staff, that picture would remain. And so now it's gone. And let me show you how we got rid of that in case you have that bug. And all we did is clear this out. So let's go into the developers. Here's your developers tab. If you don't have the developers tab available for you, you can click the file, go into the options, and under the customize ribbon, we'll just make sure that the developers is selected here, and that's going to have your developers tab display. Alt F11 will also get you there, so we can do that and get into our VBA. And right here under the employee miscellaneous, we have our employee load. This is the macro that runs each time a new employee or employee ID is selected, and that's going to create that. And so what I've done here is I've added just 3 lines of code right here. And the main one is the shapes attached thumb. This is the name that we assign to every attachment. We're going to delete that. And we don't need to hide that because for each new attachment, when the user selects it, if there's a preview, that's going to get recreated. So we're welcome to delete it. We don't have to hide it. We can actually delete it because a new one gets recreated. Now, if for some reason there is no attachment thumb displayed or no attachment that exists, it's going to create a bug if we try to delete it and it doesn't exist. So we've wrapped that on air resume next and on air go to 0, and this way if for some reason there is no attachment thumb, it's not going to create a bug. So we've done that. So that is just the 3 lines of code that we've added in here, and that's going to make sure that that attachment picture disappears when we change for a specific employee, and it'll come back when we select the line. All right, so that covers that. Let's see what else. We had a few scheduling bugs that we fixed, and I wanted to go over that with you. Under here, scheduling fixed bug due to when we archived the first employee, when we archived that would bring a bug up, and here's why. Now, if we look on the scheduling, we see that there's a link here, right? Link to BC4. But if we take out a specific employee in the events list, it previously created a bug. and especially the first one because we've copied that. So what we do is we want to make sure that we update this formula. You see it starts at BC4. We want to update that completely all the way down so that the formulas are always linked to our specific employee list, which is right here in column BC. This is what we're linking to, BC4, starting that. So basically, I need to make sure that those links are always alive and active here into the scheduling. These links must exist. So what do? We just add a few lines of code. Let's go ahead and take a look into the employee archive and take a look at that and see what we did to fix that. Also in the employee mix module, we scroll down and we look for employee archive here. And what I did is I just created a formula here. I just added this specific formula in D8, right? That's the formula we need. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that formula and I'm going to basically copy it down. In this case, it's not going to be a copy and paste. We're going to use a direct formula to formula automatically all the way down through D18. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this range right here. We're going to say that this range equals D8, 314 equals all the way to the formula D8. So that means every formula any formula that is in D8 is going to be copied all the way from D8. Now you can increase this number. If you have 1,000 employees, you will want to increase this number. So make sure that your ranges are covered to cover all of the potential employees in the future. You want to make sure we've set it at 314, but you can increase or decrease if you do not have that many employees, or set it to your exact ranges. So we've covered that, and that covers that bug so that anytime an employee is archived, we're going to update that formula so we don't get any ref errors in that. All right, moving right along before we get to the main attraction, we're going to cover a few other things. Now we have here also in the admin, we've added a browse for time clock folder. And the reason is that I want to know where the time clock information is. We're going to bring this data, this remote data, into Excel, and I need to know what folder that's going to go to, and it should be a browse folder. In other words, it's going to come in, right? And it's going to be coming to a Dropbox, and I'm going to explain to you exactly how that's going to work, but I need to set the folder where that is in. And for us, I've set it here into remote entry. So in your Dropbox, and you will probably want to get Dropbox. Dropbox is a free software up to 2 gigabytes, which covers almost everything. And I'm using a lot, so I'm only paying $10 a month, and that covers up to 2 terabytes. So it's a really great deal if you want to pay for that. But it's a great software. I've been using it for 8 years. It's one of the best. It's has less issues than Google Drive and less issues than Microsoft OneDrive. So it's a really, really great file sharing, and it's free, so you will want to get that. If you don't already have it, it also keeps backup copies. So it's really, I do all my work in there in Dropbox. So I've just added a macro here to browse for the file, and what it's going to do is let us browse for a specific Dropbox file. So what I've done is I've created a remote time clock entries here, and I've just set that folder as inside my Dropbox, and that is where our Dropbox time clock logs are going to be stored. Right, there are also some people that will not use this time clock integration. They may not have employees out in the field. They may not want to use remote time clock integration. For that case, I've added a setting here in the admin screen under the time clock settings, just an admin. So when we click no, this is going to go to gray, so that this is not necessary if they don't use time. And I'm also going to use this no. We're going to automate this process, right, where we always check the folder if there's any new entries. But if this is no, then there's no reason to check the folder. Okay, so we're going to need that a little bit later on. So I'll put some conditional formatting here that basically says if this is no, color it gray. And I'll go ahead and show you that. Under the home, conditional formatting, it's a very basic conditional formatting. I've used a formula, but you could use anything else. You don't necessarily need a formula for that. But when you click edit rule, it's just going to say if F27 is equal to no. In that case, I'm going to give it a font color of a dark gray, and I'm going to give it a fill color of a light gray. And the range in which that's going to be affected is going to be D428 through I428. So it's going to be, this is the range that I want to change those colors. So it's very simple. You can also, of course, when you're doing that cell that contains, you can do the cell value equal to and then just no. So you could do that as well. That would cover it. Not necessarily to have a formula in this case, but there's 2 different ways, same thing. All right, so that's going to cover us. That's just something we added on the admin screen. I wanted to show that to you. That's going to help us. Covers our remote time clock integration. And I'm going to show you exactly how we did that. All right, so let's just knock a few things off the list so we can get you caught up. And also we had some bugs on the totals. There were some issues on totals. So now we have a time clock history, and now we've got all of our totals, total break, regular hours, and overtime hours. This wasn't too accurate, so what we did is we updated some totals, and that's gonna be needed for the payroll integration, which we're going to get to, based on the formulas here over in the time clock list. And we've updated these formulas to be more accurate and to make sure that they cover every type of scenario. And those scenarios include missing clock out, missing break, missing, so that they're all accurate now. And this one's negative because of the times are negative. So if these were updated, 5:51 to 3, obviously that's not, if we were to change that to 6, all right, then it wouldn't be negative. Okay, so you see it's accurate. Now these times are regular hours, break hours. So I fixed the formulas in these cells because these are the formulas in our macro. They could get copied down, and then when they get copied down here, they create us an accurate time. So that's important. I wanted to show you that. And then of course those, when we refresh it, those totals get brought right into here. And of course we're going to use that. We're going to use a filter where we actually set a specific payroll, and then only that data based on the payroll, the from and to dates, get listed within that. So that's going to be something. We'll get to that in the next one, but I wanted to show you that there were some issues with the totals. We fixed those as well. In fact, let me show you what we got in store for the next few weeks. Here's my list on my employee manager to do. I keep an organized list so we can set what we've got to do. I've got a payroll screen that we need to do. We're going to do settings per payroll, review, summary, and print pay stubs. We would like to do that. Events, we've got to finish up the events. We need to, I want to add a duplicate event in there. I want to add an all day button so that the times are automated. We need to check if there's conflicts. I need to get the pop-up and email reminders functioning, so we need to do that. We need to finish the events and automate note reminders, so we got to finish that. On the admin side, I'm going to consider adding user types like admin, user owner, or admin manager user. These are roles based on the user so that we can easily set control and user security based on the user role. So it might be a little bit easier than specifically adding what a specific user can do. So I wanted to try that. So we need to set, obviously we need to fix the user and security in the admin. I need to update. I want to know, as far as in the admin, I want to know what databases were updated by what user. So we're going to focus that when we do the sharing. We're going to do on-sheet login. We're going to try, maybe I'll try login without a form. We've done forms, and almost everybody does forms, but I might try, I'm going to see how that works, just using a sheet. A very basic sheet on start. So we'll try that and see how that works. I like to try things differently. They may not necessarily be better, but I like to try them different. So that gives you the options. You can see the choices and make a decision for yourself. Not everything I do is always the best, but at least you have choices. And, you know, and for one project, a user form might be perfect. For another one, a sheet. So you always have choices, because I'd like to try different things. So we need to add the multi-user mode and add workbook sharing mode. Those are modes that are going to be on or off, and then different settings. Employee manager, we need to do new employee defaults. I think we want that. A leave tab. We have to show all, like our leave tab only contains certain, so I want to show all. What that means is I want a button here in the employee leave here, right? So it only shows so much leave, but I want to do a show all. And for events, I want to have a show all too. So it'll bring you to the list and show all. In other words, there's just a limited amount that we can show in here. There's only 17 items. But what if I want to see 100? What if I want to see all of them? We'll put a little button here that says show all, and it'll bring us, for example, in the events history, it's going to bring us to the events list, and then it'll put a little filter up here, and then it'll show only those. So that's kind of what I've got in store for the show all, just so I bring you up to speed on that. We need to do a little bit of formatting, time clock, add remote. This is done. I just did this today, so we can check that off. Add reactive employee button. Reactive employee button. Oh, in our reactivate, I should say, in our disabled or inactive employee list, employee archive, I want to add a button here that reactivates. So if you have an employee come back, right, I want to add a button up here so that if you select a specific employee and then reactivate it, removes them from the archive list and puts them right back on the employee list. So one of our great YouTube comments said that, so I think it's a great idea. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that out. I've got that on the agenda as well. We have scheduling, add clock in and out pop-ups to schedule. I'm thinking about some additional features. I want to add in clock in and out status. So I want to do a little bit more on the schedule with the ability to clock in and clock out. I'll probably use a user form in that case. Right click on the schedule and be able to, let's take a look at the schedule. So kind of what I'm thinking of is we have some time clock data here, like let's say missing clock out. I want to be able to right click and I want to add to this time clock. I want to be able to clock them out. Right now we have go to event. So I want to create a feature where we can update the time clock right from the schedule, probably using a pop-up user form. And that could be really helpful and quick way to edit it. Otherwise you've got to go here and search the data, and that's really not user friendly. So I want to do that. That's kind of important to quickly update based from either the month view or the week view schedule. So we got that on the agenda as well. And this is important, update the time clock ID. If the time clock ID is based on the clock in date, but if the clock in date changes, so should the ID. Let me show you what that means. Time clock list, right? Our clock in ID is based on the clock in date. When they clock in November 24th, it's based on this. But what if the clock in date changes? This clock in ID should change as well. So I've got to make sure to add in functionality for that. So that's really important. So that's what we've got on this amazing project of ours. I'd love to do a custom ribbon, right? We have all these great features, but all we're really doing is going from sheet to sheet to sheet. And it's kind of boring. What if we were to add a custom ribbon in here and it gives us all the abilities to do tons of features just by clicking on the custom ribbon? So I'd like to do that. I haven't done a video on that, and I think it's about time I did a custom ribbon video. So this is a perfect project to try that on. So I've got that on the schedule. And workbook sharing, obviously the shared workbook feature is extremely important. So we're going to be covering that. That's going to be a little bit towards the end. We've got to cover all the databases first to make sure everything's perfect before we move into the sharing. And of course, reports. I want to do a report so we have some payroll summary, time clock summary, and reports like that. And so that's what we have on the agenda. So that's what we got coming up next week. So I hope you watch each and every episode. It's going to be really great. And we've got so much to cover. Of course, also, if you haven't seen my dashboard course yet, I would love for you to take a look at that. And if you do get a chance, take a look at it. It's going to be it's a great course. We've got so many different features. It's a single click dashboard report. And we show you the ability to add custom reports, to toggle and show columns. We have the ability to do drill down and drill up. So it's really, we also have the ability to save as Excel, PDF, or picture, and email as also Excel, PDF, or picture, and print too. Tons and tons of features in this. It's a great course, so I'll make sure to include a link if you want to learn how to build these dashboards, filtering, sorting. Everything's here in this dashboard, and it's really the dashboard that launched my career. So I'd love for you to take a look, and I'll make sure to include a link in the description down below, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. All right, let's move on to our main event here, and that is going to be our remote time clock integration. So let's move on into the time clock list, and basically what I want to do is I've added a method here now because I want to know the difference between if they're clocking in with a time clock or if they're clocking in remotely. So I've added that up, and in fact, the time clock macro, that's the one that runs this. So when we run a macro and we clock somebody in, I want to know the difference if they've clocked in manually here on the time clock or it's remote. So for example, the one I just added is now time clock. And all I did was add a small line of code to this macro. So let's go ahead and show you that macro. That's the older macro. So if we go into the VBA and we go into time clock macros and we scroll up here and we see that all I did was set the method here in column J. We had that column open, so it was available to us. So all we did is J in the time clock. I'm just adding time clock method. So that's how we did that. So that covers the time clock, and now let's focus on the remote. Now the remote, basically what I want to do is I want to give employees the ability to clock in and out from anywhere they have. And to do that, we need to create a form. And a form is going to take it. And we've done Google Forms before, but I wanted to show you something different. I wanted to show you the ability, this is called Jotform, and it's just an amazing form builder. And basically what I did is I've created this form. It just took me a few minutes. and it gives us the chance to put an employee ID, time clock ID, and stuff. Let me show you what this is and how we did this. So let's go back into the basics. This is called Jotform, and I've included a link in the application here so that you can see this under the employee manager here. I've got all the details right here so you can get the links. I've got links to Jotform right here so you can get your own, and it's free for up to 100 entries, and it's just amazing. Now, we're usually familiar with Google Forms, but this thing takes forms to a whole new level, and I really wanted to show that to you. So here in Jotform, I've got this form, and let's go ahead and create a new one. Remember, this is jotform.com. I've included the links, and this website gives us the ability to create brand new forms. Now, you're all familiar with Google Forms. Let's go through Google Forms. Google Forms will also work great with this. All right, so if we were to go into our Google Drive previously, we know we can create forms, and if you're not familiar, we have here under more Google Forms. Now, this is a nice little form tool, and it's free, and we have the ability to add questions, and we've done it before, whether it's multiple choice, check boxes, drop down. So it's a really good basic form, but I wanted to take it to a next level, and I wanted to show you something different. We've covered forms, but I wanted to show you something different. When you want to create something a little bit better, let's do that, because I wanted to show you that. So this is called Jotform, and it's really incredible. It's a fantastic form builder, and to do that, all we really need to do is create a new form. Just click the create form here. You'll log in, and it's free there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the pricing just so you're familiar with that. We have here the free. We can do 100 monthly submissions. We can do up to 5 forms, and we have some branding, so the Jotform name is going to be on. And that's what we're using now for starter. But if you do want to use this and you want to use some features, you can pay about $20 a month and get more than enough of what you need. So if you decide to do that, you can use that. So let's create a form. And what we can do is we'll create you can do like steps, step 1, step 2, this type of form. That's pretty cool. And so we're going to create just a basic form. We're going to create that. And we also have the ability to import a form and use a template. Now I'm going to create a link from my form. So for example, if we click import, I'm going to give you this link from a web page. So I'm going to give you the link. If you want to use the form that I created, just enter the URL, and I've included that URL right here. It's called My Sample Form, right? So this URL's here. You can use mine if you want, or you can create your own. It's so simple. You can create your own, really. So we're just going to create our own. So let's go ahead and create form and go back into create form, and we'll just blank form, and we'll give it a title, call it test form, and click create. And I know this is beyond Excel, but the capabilities are awesome, because not just time clock data, but you could create any kind of form. You can send it to anybody and have that data come back into Excel. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We've done that before using Google Sheets, but today we're going to do it without Google Sheets. So it's going to be really amazing training. So I want to show you that. We can give it a form name. It's here. We can give it a subheader. And all the form elements you want are right here. So we've got header, our basic fields, email, address, phone, date picker, time, short text entry, long text. I mean, it's just amazing. We've got tons and tons of great fields here. So for our purposes, let's go ahead and put in a short text, and we'll just drag that here, and we'll call it employee ID. And that's fine as it is. It's just a short text. And I also want to create a date field, and that date's going to have a time field. So let's go ahead and add that in. I believe it's up here right under date picker, and we'll just drag that right here. And so we have the date, but we need the time. Let's change this. We can just clock in. So we'll just call it clock in. And I want to add a time to this. Now, when you want to edit it, just click the editing here, and it's going to bring some options over here. We have label alignment, so we can do label top or right. And let's keep it in top for now. We can make it required or not. Now, for you, required, if your employees always clock in and out from the field, you may want it required. But please consider the scenario if they've come in the morning and they've clocked in already, and then they go out on the field and they clock out, right? So they only really want to submit their clock out data because the clock in already exists. So then in that case, you would not want to make this required. You wouldn't want to require them to clock in if they've already clocked in previously. So keep that in mind. So making fields required or not is up to you. You can have a separator, so it's really nice. You can change it. I mean, the options are amazing here. And into the options here, we also have the ability to show or hide a calendar pop-up. We have a light mode, which is make it smaller or bigger. And I also want to add in the time. We can add in the time here, which is really cool. So if we click here, it gives us the ability to add in. For our purposes, we do want the time. And then we can have the minute stepping. So if you want them to clock out at 5-minute intervals, 10 minutes, so we can keep this at 1 or whatever you want, you know, if you want it only at 5-minute intervals. So this is far much of a better form than the Google Forms. It's really incredible. So we have that ability, and it's very, very intuitive. Okay, so I've got clock in, and I've got this. Now I want to copy this. Now there's a way to copy it, but you can also use shortcut keys. Control C, Control V is going to automatically bring that up. So now we're going to move this to break out, okay, because we want to know when they've clocked out for the breaks. And again, Control V again is going to copy and paste. It's really, really intuitive. And we can change this to break in. And again, Control V, we'll paste it down there. And now, let's do it. Control C, Control V, there we go. And now we have our last. Now we're going to change this to clock out. And we also have the ability, we have a submit button here, but we also have the ability to change the look. It's really amazing. We have ability to go into advanced, and we can take a look at here under the button image. We can choose a file if we want an image for it. We have a style, so we can change the style of it. It's really amazing. We also have the ability to change, we can add a logo, which I have done in my sample. And we also have the ability to customize it. We can customize the form. We can give it a style. So we've got really endless possibilities. We even have an advanced designer here. So you can get really technical with your form. It's truly a great, probably the best form builder that I have seen. And so we also have the ability to add payments. They have PayPal payment buttons, tons of widgets. So you name it, you can add a signature onto this. So it's pretty incredible. So I've done it already to save a little time. I've created a form. Let's go back to my forms, and I've created a remote time clock entry form, which you saw already. So you have the ability to edit it. You have the ability to view the form. So let's go ahead and view that form now. And basically what happens is when the user fills it out, I've made this required so they can put in their ID number, date, they can put in the hour here. Let's just say they clock in at 8 o'clock a.m. And then I've made it required, so anytime something doesn't get filled in, it shows up in red, which is nice. Breaks, I did not make required because you may not take breaks. You have the ability pop-up calendar or this. So let's go ahead and you can set the default on these. I've set the default to clock in to the current date, but I didn't set these. So, you can set the defaults or not set the defaults. We can clock out at like 5 o'clock and then PM. So that's it. And then you send the time clock entry, and then our next step is we want to bring that into Excel. So I'm going to show you exactly how we do that now. And of course, the best way to do that is to use our friend Zapier, or Zapier, however you pronounce it. And let's go ahead and show that to you. You may remember we've covered this in multiple videos, but this is just an amazing application that allows us, that also works with this Jotform, and it also works with Dropbox, and we want to use both of those. Basically what I want to do is I want to take the form data that's been submitted and I want to send it to Dropbox. I'm going to send it in a text file, and then what we're going to do is we're going to parse that text file and bring it directly into Excel. And so that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and take a look into Zapier, and I've got it. So the idea is I've already created it, but let's take a look at how we would do that. So you'll make a Zap here. You start that out. We'll click on that. If you don't have an account, it's free, so don't worry. And we're going to first find out what app. We want to start with our Jotform app. So we'll type that in, and that's the data we want to pull it from, and we want to bring it into Dropbox. And the trigger is going to be a new submission. That means when we create a new form, that's what we want to happen. That's the only choice, so that's fine. And then moving along, we're going to give it a name. All right, and we want to test to make sure. I've already connected it, but you're going to get a pop-up that says, do you want to connect? And it's going to connect. Make sure you've already created a Jotform account because it'll test it. We're going to test it. Okay, so it did connect to my account. My account was already connected. So you'll just have a pop-up. And then it's connected. We're going to save and continue. And what I want to do next is I want to ask for a specific form. There's a specific form. And we created this test form. This one's not complete, right? But we do have remote time clock entry. This is the form that we have that we're focused on. Remember, that's the form. I've got two forms. In fact, I can delete this one. We're not going to use this. But the remote time clock, this is the form we're focusing on. So already Zapier has gone into Jotform and found all the forms that I have, and this is the one we're focusing on, remote time clock entry. So that's the one. We can refresh the fields just if we want, so that'll keep us to make sure all the fields are done. And we're going to continue on that. If you were to make a change in the form, then you'd want to refresh. And we have multiple submissions, and that's fine. We can pull up any of those. So we have a lot of, you can get more samples. You can see all of the samples. And it's just going to pull some samples of some submissions that we've made, because then we're going to use those submissions, and that's going to help us. So we've got those, so we can cancel it. We've already got enough samples, and we're going to continue, click continue. So basically what you want to do is, once you've created your form, create at least one entry. In other words, complete the form, make sure you get this thank you, so that you have all the entries. And you'll want to make sure you filled out every item, even for samples. So make sure you put in your clock in, your break out, your break in, and your clock out, and of course the employee ID. All that's important, so we can pull that data directly into Zapier here. Once we're on this screen, we see submission A. We can check that, and this is the details of that. So when we scroll down here, we can see information that's based on breakout, employee ID, clock in date. So that's going to be fine. That's found our data, so we can continue on to the next step. Now we need to connect another account. So what I want to do is, I want to take this Jotform data and I want to bring it into Dropbox. So we're going to select Dropbox. I'm going to find Dropbox, and of course it's going to connect to your account. It's already connected to my account, but what do I want to do? Once it's connected to my Dropbox account, which it already is, I want to create a text file. So let's select that up, and it creates a brand new text file from plain text that I specify. So that's what I want. I want to create a text file, and I'm going to save and continue. And the next step is going to make sure it's connected to my account, which it is, and we're going to test that out to make sure it's done. Okay, we've done that, and we've continue on. And of course, it'll be a pop-up for you if you've never connected your Dropbox before. It'll show a pop-up. And now I want to select what folder do I want to save the new file to. So I suggest you create a very specific folder. And as of you know, we have already created a folder in the application. When we go to admin, select admin, when we click time clock settings, this folder here, let's click yes on this. This folder here is the folder which we've set, remote time clock entry. So that's the same folder I'm going to use in our screen right here. So when we select here, it's going to go look through all the folders, and it's going to find the folder. In fact, it's here, the first one, remote time clock entries. And I want to specify a file name. Now this is going to be a unique file name, and the good thing is we can make this file name variable, which is going to be really helpful. And really what I want to do is I want to make it the clock in date, and I want to use the employee ID, just like very similar to our employee IDs. So let's go ahead and select from the variables that we have, and let's take a look at that. So we have pulled down here employee ID. We have that. We have clock in date and time. Let's click that, and then I'm going to put a dash here, just like our data, and then I'm going to put in employee ID, not the ID. This is the form ID. This is the form ID. We don't want that. We want employee ID. So we're going to look down here, employee IDs, the fields. So we want to keep that. So that's the name, and of course it's going to end with TXT. So that's the name, right? And then what do I want the file? What do I want inside this file? Well, pretty much I want all the data. So let's take a look at that. The first is I want to give it a name, right? These are very important. I want to put some text in here. I want to parse, because we're going to need to parse it. So first thing is employee ID, and then a colon, and then I want the employee ID. So let's find that. Let's scroll down and look back on that employee ID here. And then what do I want next? Well, I want the clock in, right? So clock in, and then a colon, and then I'm going to put the clock in date and time. That's a field here. So let's go ahead and put that in. Clock in date and time right here. Next, I'm going to do break out, and then a colon, and then I'm going to put in the breakout. It may be nothing, which is fine, but let's go ahead and break out date and time. And of course, break in is going to be next. Break in, colon, we're going to add the break in field, and the break in would be right here, break return date and time. So break in. So we have here, we have no data, which is fine. And then the last thing is we want clock out with a colon. So that's the last item, clock in. So here, clock out date and time. And then do we want to overwrite this file? No, we don't want to overwrite it, but but it's not going to be there, so it's not going to be worried. And so now we can continue. Let's go ahead and continue. Now we have it. Now we're going to send a test to Dropbox. So first thing is we want to make sure that we have the sample. And let me go ahead and show you the trigger that I've built for this, because that's got everything inside already. So let's go ahead and take a look at this so we can see what it looks like a fully formed. But now you know how do we create it. So I did the same thing right here. Create a text file, and let's go back into the template. Let's take a look at this, the one I've created, and this contains the data that we spoke of. So here we have employee ID, we've got the clock in, we have break out, break in if there's data, and the last one is clock out. So we've done that. Overwrite, no, and then we'll continue. And so basically this is out. Now we test. Now we can test it. Let's say we want to run a test. Okay, we can test the file, and here's the information. We can just run a little bit of test, retest this step, and what that's going to do is automatically add a file in our folder here, and this is what they look like. And these are the text files that we get as soon as they are, generally almost as soon. Sometimes it's up to 15 minutes. Keep in mind that it's going to say that it's going to be up to 15 minutes. Sometimes they don't have it automatically. And we can retest this step. Just click retest and then send to Dropbox. It'll send this test right to the Dropbox. And here's my time clock, and there it is. It was so quick. There's the information. If we double click on this text file, open it up, we'll see all the information here. We have employee ID 1009. Clock in November 29th, 8:05. Break out, there's no break. Break in, nothing. Clock out 11:23, 4:50. So we've got all the information right here. That is how we do it. That is how we bring it. Now all we need to do is take this information and bring it into Excel. And then once it's brought into Excel, I want it pulled into the archives here. I don't want anything here, and I want to put it into this archives folder. We're going to show you how to do that. Only information here. When we run our macro, only those items here are going to be added in. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and how that would work back into the time clock list. And we see here we have remote. Let's go ahead and clear that out. Right here, we can just delete that. And when we run our macro, just click the remote time. It's going to bring that information right in here. And then what it's going to do is going to take that, it's going to bring that out, and it's going to bring it right into our archives, which is here. So it's going to remove it from that main folder. Only new items will be there. So it's really great. Let's go ahead and continue on, and we'll click finish on our Zapier, and we'll see this is already on, and now it's good. So let's go ahead and see how that would work. Once again, let's go ahead and make a time clock entry here into our, we're going to put in, let's take a look, 1010, and we'll put in all the breaks and information. Let's go ahead and take a look at, let's say 2 o'clock a.m. They work early until the breakout. We can add a breakout also on the 1st. We'll go ahead and put that at 5 a.m. And let's say they're back in also on the turn at 5:30 a.m., just a 30-minute break. So we have that, and we'll scroll up. This will be from the mobile device, but they could use any computer. And on the 1st, let's just say they've worked until 11 a.m. on the 1st here. I'll make it 11. Okay, so now we've got all the information in. We're going to submit the time clock entry. And there we go. And now we go ahead and pull in this folder here. All right, there you have it. Now it's in our Dropbox. Let's go ahead and take a look at it in the text. Basically, we have employee ID here, clock in here, date and time, break out, date and time, break in, date and time, and clock out. So we've got all of that information. Now what I need to do is basically take this information and get it into this table right here. And we do that very easily with just a macro, and I'm going to walk you through that macro. And the first thing we want to do is we want to get that information in this table, and I'll show you exactly how we do that in the macro. So back into the developers tab we go, into the Visual Basic, and I've created a brand new module called Time Clock Remote Sync, and we're going to walk you step by step through this macro. All right, the first thing we want to do, the idea is basically this. What I want to do is I want to take the information here. I want to parse the information. In other words, I want to find where this is and put this in. I want to find this clock in and take that and put that in a cell. I want to take all that information, but I want to do that through every single file. There may be 20 or 30 different different text files here in this folder. Once the information is put in the table, I want to take this file, I want to drag it into the archives button. For example, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's take all of this entries and bring it back into the remote time clock. Now if we look in our archives, we have nothing here. In this folder we have nothing here. In our time clock we've got a bunch of information here. So what I want to do is in Excel, when we run this macro and we import it, it's going to take all that information, bring it here, and then it's going to take every single text file and take it out of here and put it into the archive. So that's what I want to do. And let's go ahead and the last one we just created, which is this one right here, I'm going to put that back into the time clock so we can work with that one. So now we have just one file, and that's the one we just created. And of course I'm going to delete that entry right here, or we can keep it now so we can work with it, but this is the entry. So basically here we've created a time clock ID, which is the date 2018 12/1, and then the employee ID 1010, and then we have the employee ID 1010, the employee name, which we're going to grab, we're going to use that, and I'll show you how we do it. We take the clock in, the clock out break, the clock in break, and the clock out, and then we're going to add a row and then the method. So we're going to do all of that in this macro right here, and the macro is called time clock sync remote entries. Now if we run this macro on this open book, if we run it on workbook open, we can run it right here. I've commented out, but this will run automatically when you open up the workbook. Any folders or files in that time clock folder are going to be brought right into the time clock entries. It's going to be really great if we add that on automated status. Okay, we're going to be working with the folder structure a little bit because we need to find all of the items in the folder, and we also need to check to make sure there's an archive and create an archive folder if necessary. So we will need to dimension the file system object, FSO in this case, as an object. Time clock row is long. We need to get the time clock row. What we want to do is let's assume that they've actually clocked in here, but they haven't clocked out, and they clock out on the field. I either want to add a new row, or I want to find the existing and update the existing row. So we may have to update if they've already clocked in the office in the morning and then they've gone out on the field and they use their mobile phone to clock out. Well, we need to update the existing row. We wouldn't want to create a new row. So maybe this 2 a.m. here has already been done through the office, but then this information, the break information and the clock out, will be done through mobile, so we can do that as well. So we're going to check for existing ID and update or add new. So of course we need to dimension the row as long. Time clock folder, okay, let's make that as string. Okay, we need to add that. The file name is string. We're going to use the TC file. That is going to be our time clock file as string. And of course the text within that file as a string. This is going to be our text file here, right here. This is our text file, and this is our text file string. It's the entire string that we're going to parse. We're going to take that apart and pull information out of it. So we need to define that. We're going to have the text line. We have time clock ID, employee ID, clock in, breakout. We've got lots of different strings there. They're basically all the information that we're going to be taking out. We also need to dimension the time clock ID range as a range, and that is because we may need to find it existing. As I mentioned before, we need to see, is it here? If it's part here, what row is it on? If it's not here, add a new one. So I need to define that range, and I need to define if we found that range. Also, I need to add the employee name. So we need to add employee ID as find the employee ID, which would be here in the employee list here. So we're going to dimension this employee ID as a range 2 because I need to find the ID, and then I need to pull their name from column BC. I need to pull this name and bring it into the time clock list here. Bring it in here and put it here. So we're going to do that. So we need to dimension the time clock range. Then we need to dimension the found, if it's found or not. Again, dimension the employee range, and then dimension whether it's found or not. So each time we look for something, we need to dimension 2 different items as ranges. The first thing we want to do is we want to set the time clock ID range as sheet 9. Sheet 9 is our time clock list, time clock ID, and this is a dynamic range. Let's just look at that so we know exactly what we are working with. When we go into the formulas, the name manager, and we click T and we scroll down to time clock time clock list ID, and we tab over, we will see that it's the entire list. It's a dynamic range. So that's the list we need to search for. Okay, so we need to define that, and that's the name of that list is called time clock list ID. So that is the range that we're going to set. And of course, the same thing for the employees, right? Well, employee ID here is also the employee list ID. So then next up, we're going to define that. That is employee ID. The name of that list is employee ID. So those two lists we need to define in our code. So we've done that right here in these two lines. The time clock ID range is equal to sheet 9 and the time clock. This is the named range right here, that dynamic name range. Again, employee ID is in sheet 2. That's the employee list. So we've defined those two names because we need to search within those ranges. We're going to be primarily focused on sheet 9. That is the time clock list. So we're going to do with sheet 9. And also, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure the user has set a time clock, a folder for the specific where we're going to put in the specific text files. So I need to make sure that we check to make sure that is not empty. That specific folder is right here in the admin. Under time clock settings, and if we scroll down, we'll see if we select this, the name of this is called remote time clock folder. I've given this field a named range. So we can set that on. We need to make sure that this isn't blank. If it's blank, we have no folder to check where the time clock logs are going to go. So we need to make sure that this is actually a valid file path and it's not blank. So we need to check that first in our code. So we're going to say if sheet 4, that's the admin, remote time clock folder equals empty, then do what? Then activate sheet 4. We're going to activate the admin. We're going to select H4. We're going to select H4. And what is that? That's going to tell us H4 is right here. So if we're here, right, and we want to direct the user to the actual space, we kind of select H4. H4 is that tab. So it selects that, and then we're going to scroll down and select this and tell the user, okay. And then we're going to click this macro here. We're going to say to the user, please browse. What is this? This is a right click. This is a macro. I'm just going to click assign macro. It's off the screen. So all I did was just click assign macro, and we'll see that the macro that's been assigned is called browse remote time clock folder. All of this is a macro that we've created in the admin macros. And then we have it here called browse remote time. All this does is create a file dialog, and whatever folder the user selects, it puts it right here, sheet 4 remote time clock folder. We can use a range like H4, H10, I5 or whatever, or we can name the range. And I like to use name ranges because if we decide to move this, if I decide to move this right here or here or here or here, whatever, the name's going to stay with it. So I don't need to update the code. So that's why I like using named ranges, because when we move it, and this, admin screen isn't 100% set yet, so theoretically we could move it. So if we do, now I don't need to update the code. That's why I like using named ranges. So that is where our folder path is going to be put, sheet 4. So that's all that macro does. So we've got that. So it's going to say sheet 4 select, please make sure to select a default Dropbox or shared folder in which the remote time clock entries are sent. So we got to make sure that. And then of course we're going to run the macro that I just showed you, browse remote time clock folder. That's going to run that macro automatically for them. We're going to do one, so once that macro is set, it allows the user to set that folder. And then we're going to run one more check. If, for some reason, even after, if it's still blank after they've run this, then exit the sub. Then maybe they don't want to sync at that time or something, so then we can exit. But assuming it's not blank, then we can continue down with the rest of the macro. Now, so once we have that folder location set, we can set a variable to that range called time clock folder. There's a string variable here, time clock folder. Now we have our time clock. For our purposes, time clock folder is right here. This long string right here, this is what we call time clock folder. So we've got that set, and we also want to set the file system object, FSO variable that we set up here as an object under late system binding. Let me close that, get out of there. Okay, so late system binding, we're going to create the object, create a scripting file system object. If you've seen other videos where our file manager, we used a lot of this, we're going to be using it just a little bit. Next thing I need to know is we want to make sure to put that anything after, once we add in the text files into our log, we want to send them to this time clock. So I need to make sure this folder exists. If it doesn't exist, create it. So I will be able to do just that with the next line of code. I want to make sure that this folder create exactly as it is. If not, create it. So first we need to run a check. If the directory, time clock folder, right, that's our main folder, and this folder here, time clock archives, VB directory, this is going to check the directory, equals empty. If it's empty, then to do what? Then create it. And I want to create a folder. If the folder doesn't exist, create the folder. Then FSO, it's very simple. File system object, create the folder. What do I want to create? I want to create it in this folder. All we do is list the full path, the folder, and backslash time clock archives backslash. This is going to create the folder if it doesn't exist. And then that's it. So then we're good to go. That one line of code will create a folder. It checks. If it doesn't exist, it creates it. All right, so now we're good. Next, what we want to do is we want to set a file name to the first available file that ends in txt. And that means the file can have any name. Any name. We're going to use this wildcard here, right? The asterisk is going to say any file name that ends in txt. So it's going to set, this file name will be the first one. So if we have a list of 10, the first one is going to be the one it sets. So if we have a list of 10 files here, let's move some archives out of there. Let's go ahead and take a look at this, bring those back into the time clock entries. So if I have a list, the first one is going to be the one assigned. Then what we're going to do is we're going to run a loop, and I'm going to say for every file that ends in txt, do something. And what do we want to do is I want to pull the data out of it and I want to put it into the table. So our loop is going to run through every single item. So if we have something that doesn't end in txt, it's going to be ignored. All right, so continuing on with our macro. So we set the first one, and now we're going to set our loop. Do while is the loop. You don't see me use this very often, but in this case it works perfectly. And we're going to do how often we're going to run this loop as long as the length of the file name is greater than 0. Basically, as long as there continues to be a text, a file name that's greater than 0, or the length of the file name, I should say, is greater than 0, then continue on and do the following. Now, what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do is all of the continuing. So this is where our loop starts, start of loop. And let's just put it end, and our end of the loop is going to be right here, called where it says loop, end of loop. Spell that right. Okay, so now we've got it. Now we've got our loop. Now let's go ahead and focus on this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the information from the time clock. So I want to name this file. The file name is going to be TC file. That's going to be the name. It's going to be the folder, the full file name, which includes the folder and the file name. We've defined the file name here. So we've got the full file name. The full file path is going to be in TC file. What I want to do then is I want to open it. It's really a great trick because it opens it. Even if the file is open already, it'll open it, but it doesn't really open it. It opens it behind the scenes. So it's fast, super, super fast. That's why I love it. If we were opening Word or Excel or something, it'd be much slower, but this is super fast. You can see we can do so many very quick. And so it'll open it for input as number 1. And it's going to set this as number 1. And we only have one line of code, so we don't need to worry about that. And all we're going to be doing is setting the text, line 1 of this code. Remember, we only have one line, so we're going to focus just on one line. We only have one line. So it's going to set this one line to time clock text, or TC text. So we're going to focus just on that one line. Line input 1 is equal to TC text. Now we can close the file. We've already pulled all of the text that we need into this variable, so we can close it now. Now what I want to do is basically here, let's go ahead and pull it open so I'll show you what I want to do. The first thing I want to do is I want to pull this information. I want to get the employee ID. And I know that information is going to be found right here. After the words employee ID, or pretty much after the number of characters, it's going to be right here. So let's go ahead and pull that up. And we can use that using mid. Mid is a great little feature. Let me just show you in Excel how mid works. All right, let's say we have it here, equals mid, and the first thing we want to do is the text. What is the text? Okay, so let's click here. That's going to get us the text. And what are we going to start? Let's say we start at 4 character number 4, and let's say we want to pull in 5 characters, the number of characters we want to pull in. So if we do use the mid, it's going to pull up users, right? Users. Why is that? Because it's going to count. Let's go ahead and go through that. We're going to here's the full text we're going to use. We're going to start at 1, 2, 3, 4 over, 4 characters to the right, right? And we want to use it for 5 characters. So the users, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see there's 5 users, there's 5 characters. So that's it. That's how mid works. The original text, what is the starting point, the starting number, and how many characters, number of characters you want to pull. So we're going to use mid to get all of our information, to parse all of our information. All we need to do is know the original text, which we have. We need to know the starting number, and then we need to know the number of characters. So we're going to use mid to get all of our information. And we can use mid, of course, inside a formula. We can also use it in VBA. So in this instance, employee ID is mid. Here's the text. Remember, this is our full line of text. We're going to use this throughout. This is everything, all of our text. We're going to start at a character 13. Why are we starting at a character 13? Because 13 is exactly the number of characters right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 13. 13. Now, how many do we want? How many do we know? Well, employee IDs could be a lot, right? You might have a 5 or 6 digit. We don't know exactly how many. So we can't just put 4 in here because we don't know how many characters. Employee, maybe you'll use 10 characters for your employee ID. Another person will use 5, so we can't really assume it's always going to be 4. But what we can assume is that it's always going to be right before clock in. So all we need to do is figure out wherever clock in is here, wherever that starts, we can use that, and then we move back. So it's going to be we start here, it's all of these numbers minus 13. So let me show you how that works. So we know we need to find clock in, right? We know it's important. We need to know where clock in is. Clock in is going to tell us, we need to know where this starts. We need to know this place. And we can use the in-string function to find where the clock in starts. Once we know where it starts, we can determine how many characters away it is. So let me show you how we did that. So we know it starts at 13, and what we want to do is I want to find clock in. I want to find it. So this here is going to give us the exact place where the clock in starts, the exact number of characters where clock in starts. So let's just say it starts at 18, right? 18 or whatever. If we subtract 13 from that, we know the number of characters. We know exactly the starting point. So if you look in here, right, if we know this is, I don't know exactly, if we know clock in starts at, let's see, we know this is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. If we know it's 18 right here, character number 18, and we subtract 13, if we subtract, then we know the exact number of characters, the difference between the starting place here minus the starting place here is going to tell us the exact number of characters that we need to use by using in-string. In-string tells us where clock in starts. We subtract 13. That is going to give us our starting point of the clock in date. So that's really, really important. So that is going to help it minus the ending point of the employee ID. So we've got that covered here. We don't need that. That's kind of additional information of employee ID. Okay. All right, so now we've got clock in. Now we're going to do clock in. Now it's a little bit more difficult. Now what we need to do is when we pull up this information, I need to know the starting point of, I know the starting point of clock in, right? So if I know the starting point of clock in, what is the starting point of the date? Well, it's the starting point plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? 9. So if the starting point of clock in is here, we're using the in string, adding 9, because this is always going to be the same, will get us exactly the starting point. So we know the starting point. Now we just need to know how many characters, right? How many characters is this? It's not always going to be the same. Maybe, maybe not, but we don't want to take that chance. We need to know 100% for sure how many characters this is. How many characters? Well, we can do is we find the starting point of the breakout, find the starting point of this point, and then we subtract the number of characters to the starting point of here, right? We know the starting point of here, we subtract 9. We subtract 9 from here, from that starting point, and we get exactly the number of characters for this. And we do just that in the VBA code, the clock in mid. This is the text we're going to parse, right? We're going to start out at the starting point of clock in plus 9, the starting point of the clock in. Again, that's very important. The starting point of clock in plus 9 is going to be right here, and that's exactly what we want. I know that's the starting point. Using mid, I must have the starting point. The next variable is the number of characters, so we're going to focus right now on the next number, comma, this is how many characters. How many characters? Well, it's the starting point of breakout minus the starting point of clock in plus 9. Let me show you that again. The starting point of breakout minus the starting point of clock in plus 9. Let me show that to you in here, in the text file. So it's the starting point of breakout minus the starting point of clock in plus 9, right? We're plus 9, so we're going to increase that. That is going to give us exactly the number of characters here. And that's what I need to know, the number of characters. So we use that exactly. And so all of our breakout, break in, clock out, they're all exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the number of characters here, because breakout has 10, breakout plus the colon has 10 characters. Clock in has 9. So we use 9 and 10, it's based on this. So each time we use it, in this case, we've clocked out. We used the last one, though. The last one is slightly different. Because in this case, we know the starting point, but the starting point is going to be the length of the entire text minus the clock out. Again, let me show you the last one. The last one is here. This is the end, right? Now, I know the starting point is going to be clock out plus 10. That's the starting point. But what's the length? Well, the length is going to be the how big it, because there's nothing after that. So what we have to do is use the length of the entire thing, the length of the entire minus the clock out, right? Subtract all this out and subtract this out. Subtract all that out, that's how we're going to get just this. So we basically extract all that information using length, but we're going to start out with length, L-E-N, and that's going to give us our total length of this, because then we know how much to subtract by. So the length, L-E-N, of the whole string minus what? Minus wherever clock out is plus 10. Clock out is plus 10, and I'll show it to you once again. So it's going to be the length of everything minus wherever this is, which is here, automatically, plus 10, that's going to give us our number right here. So we're going to subtract all of that out, and that is going to give us the exact number of characters I need for the clock out date. So we've got the clock out date there. Now the last thing is the time clock ID. I need to set that, and we're going to use the text function. We know the clock in date. Now remember, I had explained to you that in the time clock list, I want the ID. I want it year, just like exactly the same format. Year in 4 digits, the month in 2 digits, and the day in 2 digits, and the employee ID. I want them all separated by dashes. So I want to maintain that exact format. And we can do that using the application worksheet text function. And the application, this is just basic function text. And we're going to use the clock in date. We've got the clock in date, that's the one. And we're just going to set the format. 4 digits for the year, plus the dash, 2 digits for the month, plus the dash, 2 digits for the day, and an extra dash, and the employee ID. That's going to give us our time clock ID. Now we have all of our information. Now we have all the data we need. Now all we need to do is get that data into Excel. And the first thing I want to do is I want to know, are we going to be updating an existing row, or are we going to adding a new row? And so what we're going to do is we're going to search this list for the time clock ID. If that ID doesn't exist, we're going to use the first available row. If it does exist, we're going to set the row to whatever row it's found on. And we can do that with the following code. We're going to set the found time clock ID range equal to the time clock ID range. This is the range that we set all the way up here, right here, the time clock ID range right here. So we're going to set that and we're going to search. We're going to use find. We're going to search within that. And what are we searching for? We're going to search for the time clock ID. We're going to search whole values in that case. And if it's found, we're going to do something. If it's not found, we're going to do something. If not found is nothing. You know what that means? That means it is found. When you see two negatives, nothing and not, that means true. Okay, they cancel each other out. So that means if it's found, then the time clock row equals the found range, the found plus row, dot row. That's going to give us the row that it's found on. That's going to give us the row. Else, if it's not found, then we're going to assign the row to the first available row. And we can use that else time clock row equals dot range. We've already set sheet 9 dot range A99 and the last row plus 1. That's the first available row. So this, now we have our row, whether it's an existing row or whether it is a new row, we have our row. Now we can start to add in our data. We're going to first set, if it's a time clock ID, we're going to replace the existing one, which it'll be the same, or we're going to add the new one in. So the A and the time clock row equals time clock ID. B and the time clock value equals employee ID. Now what I need to do is I need to get the employee information. We did not require the employees to enter their name on the form, right? Maybe it's not necessary. Maybe they're going to enter it wrong. It's probably not necessary. It's better if they just enter the employee. It's less for them to enter just their ID, and then we can pull their name from the records that we have. So to do that, again, we're going to set the found employee ID range to equal the employee range, that's the range of IDs that we set up above. We're going to find, what are we looking for? We're looking for the employee ID. Excel values and Excel whole. Okay, we're going to look for that. If it's not found as nothing, again, that means it is found. If it's found, then range C and the time clock row equals sheet 2 BC and the employee the found row, the found employee ID range row. That's going to put that in. What is that? Well, again, let's pull up. So we want to put their name. I want to take their name, C, put the name right in here. But where's it coming from? It's coming from the employee list. When we pull up employee list, we can see right here under the column BC, this is the name we're pulling it from. And whatever row it's been found on is the row that we're going to say. So equals BC and the row. That's why we have it there. BC and the row. That's why this is BC and the row it's been found on. That's going to add our name. If it exists, it found. The next up, all we need to do is I want to check to see if there's a value in here. I want to check if there's a value here. I don't want to put anything new. If there's already an existing value here, I don't want to replace it. So it checks. If there's no value, it adds in the value. If there is a value, it ignores it. So you may want to change this. I'm not sure. It depends upon your preferences, but I did. In this set, if it's empty, only if it's empty, D would be the clock in. Then if it's empty, then go ahead and put in, then range D and the time clock value equals clock in. Add in the clock in only if the existing value is empty. The same thing with break in, break out, and clock out. We're just adding the information if it's been empty. And the reason we're doing that is if the employee has previously clocked in, maybe they've clocked in at the office or their breaks, and they only want to clock out. So maybe the only information that we really want to update is the clock out. So if the values, the existing values are empty, then we're going to go ahead and put them in. If they're still full, we will not replace the values, okay? And the next thing is we want to set the row. That's going to be helpful in the future. So we want to set the row, and that's going to, of course, in I. And then I want to set the type of clock in. Let's go ahead and write that type. That is going to be entry type. And we're going to put that as remote so that we can differentiate between the different types of clock in. This way, in column J, the method, or the type, I should say, time clock or remote, that is the method of which they have been clocked in. So we can set that. In this case, it's remote. All right, so now we have all of our data in here. And now all we need to do is move the file to the archive. What I want to do now is we're done with this. I want to take this file. I want to take this file here and move it into the archives. So bring it right there. And then we're done with it. Then we can move on to the next file. And so We do that with just this line of code. We can use file system objects, move file, and all we need is the source and the destination. The source, of course, is the TC file. That entire file has been defined here. Time clock folder and the file name. So that is our original, and our destination is going to be the time clock folder, right, plus the archives folder name plus the file name. So that's going to move it to the archives folder because we're done with it. We don't want to see it anymore. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clear the file name. We're going to clear the current file name because we're looping through all the file names. So we need to get the new one or the next one, right? Because it's cleared. So we'll go ahead and keep going through those loops, keep going through those items, and then of course if it's 0, we're going to end the loop. Once we're done, we can end the loop. So that's what tells us. So that's it for the macro. The last thing is we just end the loop and of course end with the sheet 9. That is how we do it, and that's how we run through. So when we run that macro, let's go ahead and delete some of this data, we don't need it. And so we run that macro. I've assigned this, right click, assign macro. And if we see here under time clock, we can see that we have time clock sync remote entries. That's the macro I've assigned to this button, and you don't necessarily need to. We're going to probably set it up so we will not really need this button. Maybe we'll sync right before we do payroll. We'll sync when the workbook opens. So theoretically, you should never have to sync this file, but for training purposes, we're going to sync it. So when I click right click sync it, it's going to bring all that data right in here, and it's going to take all of those files in that folder, and you see they're all gone. They've all been added to the archives, and you see how fast that is. I mean, you could do 100 in just seconds. It's super fast. It adds the data really, really fast. So it's a really important feature. It allows people to clock in and out from wherever they are, and you can actually use this to really get data into Excel in a number of means. So it doesn't have to be used just for time clock. It can be used for work orders or invoicing or anything or any information. You can also add a notes field to your time clock form. I didn't, but you could. And you could add a notes, and so that any notes the employee puts on their form will show up right here. So you could easily do that as well. All right, I'm really glad I got to show you this. It's a really, really important feature. We've got a lot to cover as I went through. We went way over time, but I really wanted to get you this. I do really appreciate you sticking with me on this series. It's a long series, but we will be creating the best employee manager you have ever seen in Excel, and that I can guarantee. And of course, if you haven't, please check out the dashboard course. That would really help me out, and I always appreciate getting you up to the minute information as you can, and it's an amazing course, so I think you'll love it. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your shares, likes, comments. I appreciate it all. Have a great day.